Okay, now we will start with the next chapter, Ritucharyam Adhyayam Vyakhyasyamas. Now that's a very interesting issue. The previous chapter was about the preparation for the surgery. That's the Aglobaharaniya. The next chapter is about Yantra and the Shastra, which is related to the actual surgical condition. Now, in between that Ritucharya Adhyaya is looks odd from a general common point of view. But the important is where a person who wishes to have a career in surgery, he has to be physically fit, and keeping that fitness as the primary issue and quite important issue. So Dhanvantari refers to that Ritucharya Adhyaya. In between, once you have prepared for the surgery, before you go into the real field of action, you have to be fit as such. And that fitness is a very essential component of the surgical career. So usually I would say like those who have a breathlessness when they climb to second floor during the rounds, they need to improve your fitness. That's the issue. Now, the Ruchakarya Adhyaya it starts with the definition of Kala. Kala or the time. Kalo hinama bhagavan स्वयंभूः अनादिमध्यनिधनः अत्र रसव्यापत् सम्पत्ति जीवितमरणे च मनुष्याणाम् आयते स सूक्ष्मामपि कलां न लीयते इति कालः सङ्कलयति कारयति वा भूतानि इति कालः. Now, Kala or the time, that's a very important issue. The definition of time in Indian philosophy. Now, when I say Indian philosophy, there is no difference between science and philosophy from the point of view. Darshana, the word Darshana of Indian philosophy, it is really the science, basic science. Now, all these issues have, these statements have some relevance when you go further into the discussion part. So, a scientific description or definition of the Kala or the time according to the Indian philosophy or as a darshanas. It's not only about Sushruta. These are the statements are common for every other Indian science as such. Now, Kala is a factor which produces a change, and it also is a cause for the destruction as well as the creation. So, a change in the sense like, see, the whole the creation of the world has occurred from a situation where there was a purely energy, and then the energy it started into a mass conversion. Molecules or atoms they started merging together, and that resulted in a bigger molecule, and then of course the whole body was created. And then there is a cycle of decomposition that gets broken down, and then again the atoms again they get dispersed, energy is again separated. So the whole universe is a mass of energy and the mass as such. Now, this continuous process can occur due to a factor which gives that scope, that time factor, and that factor is called as a Kala, and hence the word Kala is also applied to Mahakala or the Rudra, who is the god for the destruction. Yama, the death, also is named as Kala. So that word Kala has a very broader meaning, and it gives that a comprehensive idea of the importance of what we call as the time. When the time started, no one can answer. The time started before when the universe was created. That creation of the universe itself is a time. Whenever there is a possibility of change, that itself is a time, and hence the kala is considered as anadi, and it doesn't end. It cannot end because you cannot expect the world to end as such. You may have the destruction of the physical world, the physical visible world may be destroyed, but still there is always a scope for reconstruction, and hence it's a anidhana. There will be no end to the Kala as such. So hence Kala is also named as Bhagavan. It's equated to the God. तस्य संवत्सरात्मनो भगवान् आदित्यः गतिविशेषेण अक्षि निमेष काष्ठ कला मुहूर्त अहोरात्र पक्ष मास ऋतु अयन संवत्सर युग प्रविभागं करोति. Now sun is considered as the main factor decisive about assessing the kala. This kala Bhagavan, which is a anadinidana, which is a continuous process, to make it perceptible you refer it to the sun. Now there is another issue. Aditya Gati Visheshana. Whether the sun moves or the earth moves. We will come to that part also later, the detail. a version of Indian philosophy. Now, anyway, based upon the movement of the sun as we see, and in relation to what we see in this universe, it's divided into Akshini measure, seconds, Kastha, Kala, the measures of time in those periods, Muhurta, Ahoratra, Paksha, Masa, Rutu, Ayana. It's as we say, seconds, minutes, hours, and so on. Similarly, the time period was measured as such. Now, Kala also is considered as a Karana Dravya. Now, Dravya, according to Darshana Shastra, is anything which has a guna and a karma. Guna karma samavai, wherever there is a guna and karma together, that's called as dravya. So dravya is not translated, should not be translated as a material. Now the guna of kala are sankhya, parimiti, pruthakva, sanyoga, vibhaga. It gives a scope for counting, like counting number of hours, number of days, and so on. It gives a scope for assessing the duration, parimiti, a gap. Prithaktum, it can separate from one to the other, like past and present and the future, that can be separated. Sanyoga and Vibhaga, you can have some ideas brought down from the past and then it can be merged together. The information can be developed further, that's Sanyoga. And Vibhaga is you can have a feeling of separations that classify the incidents of the past, present, and so on. So that definition of Kala is a very unique and very scientific description present in Indian philosophy. Janyanam janaka kalaha jagatam ashrimatah paraparattu dhi hetuhu kshanadisyat upaditah. So when the paraparattu dhi hetuhu, these are the gunas of kala, yatrashitaha karma gunaha karanam samavayat dravyam, and because the guna and the karma are located, it's called as the dravya, karana dravya as such. Now, the present science, the current science, it has a very awkward situation when it comes to the question of defining the time. The definition of time accepted by the physicists is a progression of events from the past to the present into the future. So, if basically a system is unchanging, it is timeless. So, it is almost a copy of what the Indian philosophy says, but I would say a poor copy. A indefinite continued progress of existence and events in the past, present, and future is regarded as a whole is the definition in the dictionary. The physics definition and the linguistic definition, they are two different issues. When the linguistic definition of the time, it says about only the continuity, whereas the change is a factor considered in the physics. Now, the very popularly and very usually considered to be a major breakthrough in the science is the Einstein's theory of relativity. Einstein's theory of relativity is exactly the definition of the Kala as mentioned in our ancient texts. So, theory of general relativity says that the observation of gravitational effect between the mass results from warping of the space-time. There is a continuous exchange between the mass and the energy, and of course only the addition by Newton is about that c square, E is equal to mc square. So that's the issue. Now that E is equal to mc square is the exactly but the cycle of the life or cycle of the life mentioned in our philosophy. That's birth, then the death, then again life, and at times there is a escape to the moksha. So that theory of general relativity is really the theory of what we have in our philosophy as that's why I say the philosophy and the science are not different. Now, the definition of those time intervals, Laghu Akshara Ucharana Matva Akshinimesha. Akshinimesha is the time taken for pronouncing a single light monotone word. So, Laghu Akshara, like that's the time definition. Now, we use the time definition of seconds. Now, second, minute, and hour. The definition of those in the present day situation is based upon the time taken by a pendulum moving around in a museum in England. And based upon that, there is a standard length and the standard temperature. A standard pendulum maintained in a museum there, and that is a criteria to say which is the minute. And then, of course, you have standardized that. Now, from Ayurvedic, it is Indian philosophy point of view, you do not have that kind of a extraneous standard. The standard is within yourselves, and that's about the time taken for Laghucharana Matra Akshinimesha, time taken for pronouncing a single letter, and Panchadasha Akshinimesha Kastaha, 15 of that is Kasta, Trimshat Kastaha Kalaha, 30 Kastas are Kala, and Vimshati Kalaha Muhurtaha. The 20 kalas is the muhurta. Muhurta is somewhat equivalent to 2 hours and 15 minutes, something around that. 75 minutes is somewhat the equivalent, not exactly. And kala dashabhagascha trimshat muhurtam ahoratram and panchadasha ahoratrani paksham. So when there are 30 muhurtas, that's called as ahoratra, and panchadasha ahoratrani pakshaha, 15 of the days is paksha, and such a dividaha shukla krishnascha. The pakshas are of two categories, Shukla and Krishna. Now, that Shukla and Krishna category of the differentiation would be based upon the lunar movement. The method of measuring the time in Indian philosophy was based upon two celestial bodies. One is the sun and the other is the moon. And when it is followed by measured by sun, it's called a solar system. Then the moon, because it's much easier, it's to assess the lunar system is present also used in that. And the Shukla and Krishna Paksha is based upon the lunar assessment. Now, Tatra Maghadeya Dwadasha Masaha. The year is divided into 12 months, and Vimasikam Rutum Kutva Shadrutavo Bhavanti. 2 months are considered as a Rutu, and Teja, Shishira, Vasanta, Grishma, Varsha, Sharad, Hemantaha. The 6 Rutus mentioned in Sushruta are Shishira, Vasanta, Grishma, Varsha, Sharad, and Hemantaha. Tapastapastyo Shishiraha, Madhu Madhu Vasantaha, Shuchi Shukro Grishmaha, Nabho Nabastyo Varshaha. Yisho Gorjo Sharat Saha Sahasyo Hemantaha, the 2 sets of the 2 months as such. तयेतेस्ति शीतोष्ण वर्ष लक्षणः चन्द्रादित्ययोः काल विभागकरत्वाद् अयने द्वे भवतः दक्षिणम् उत्तरं च. Now these Shadrutus, they are categorized based upon the environmental conditions, temperature, particularly the temperature, cold and the warm seasons, and so virtually the Rutus are the seasons as such. And of course, the word Rutu is applied in the physiology of the Ayurveda in many other contexts too. The cycle, physiological cycle in the woman's body also is called as Rutu. So that's another issue. That as far as the nature is concerned, the Rutu is about the changing season as such. And they are again categorized into 2 ayanas. And the 2 ayanas, that again word ayana suggests about a movement. Now, movement of whom? That's a point which we will try to deal with. Very popularly, it's said that it's the movement of the sun, but it's not really the movement of the sun. It's about the movement of the earth, and that movement of the earth in relation to the sun is the ayana. Tayoho Dakshinam Varsha Sharad Hemantaha. The Dakshina ayana is the Varsha Sharad Hemanta. Tesha Bhagavan Apyayate Somaha. During that season, it's relatively cold, and hence the humid contents of the environment will be more. Amla Lavana Madhurascha Rasaha Balavanto Bhavanti. Uttarottaram Sarvapranyanam Balam Abhivardhate. The strength, the physical strength of the animals, living bodies in the world would be increased during that period. It will facilitate the anabolic activity. Uttaram Shishira Vasanta Grishmaha. Tesha Bhagavan Apyayate Arkaha. Tikta Kashaya Kautukascha Rasaha Balavanto Bhavanti. Uttarottaram cha Sarvapranyanam Balam Upahiyate. In the Uttarayana, the Shishira Vasanta Grishma Rutu is the prominence of the sun, and hence you will have a relatively lesser anabolic activity. It's more of catabolic activity. There is a cycle of anabolic and catabolic activity balancing in the body, and this is in relation to the seasons and the environment. This is the unique concept of the Rutu and the relation of the body. Contemporary physiology doesn't recognize these changes. Though it doesn't recognize these changes, the impacts cannot be denied as such. Shitam Shukledayaturivam Vivaswan Shoshetapi Tahu Bhavapi Samshatya Vayu Palayati Prajaha. The whole balance of the temperature, the universe is maintained by a balance of these anabolic and catabolic changes in the universe. It's not only about the body. There is a cycle of catabolism and anabolism that again represents the same conversion of energy to the mass and mass to the energy. When the energy is converted to the mass, that's the anabolic. When the mass is converted to the energy, it's the catabolic activity. Ta ubha api samsritya vayu palayate prajaha. These are regulated by another factor, the Vayu, the constant in Einstein's formula, E is equal to mc square. That c square is the Vayu, and E and m, the energy and the mass. चित्रं देवानां उदगात् अनेकं चक्षुर्मित्रस्य वरुणस्य अग्नेः आप्या द्यावा पृथिवी अंतरिक्षं सूर्य आत्मा जगतस्थस्तुश्च. This is from the Rigveda. Now this idea, this concept of the Surya, sun being the center of all the activities of the universe, is a unique concept starting from Rigveda, from the time immemorial. To say the time of Rigveda is not possible. Now, the issue of whether Surya moves or the earth moves. If you read Varahamihira in 507 AD, which is the time of period of 507 AD is given by the contemporary historians, Varahamihira and Aryabhata, the two of the astronomists of India, reputed astronomists of India. Varahamihira has written Surya Siddhanta, whereas Aryabhata is Aryabhatiya. They are very much similar, and Varahamihira has given a diagrammatic description of the whole of the universe, where sun is considered as the center, earth moving around. So heliocentric and astronomy is a original contribution of Indian Darshana Shastra. It's not Ayurveda. Indian Darshana Shastra has established that. And Varahamihira gives a very beautiful description, like when you are moving in a moving boat, we are looking at the shore of the sea or shore of the river. Now, when the boat is moving faster, you feel that it is the shore which moves, objects on the shore which move around, and you feel that the boat is in a steady position. Of course, you may have experienced the same thing in any of the moving vehicles. Maybe faster the vehicle, that kind of a notion is always faster. When you are constant, when you fly through an aeroplane, you will feel that the aeroplane is steady, but the surrounding areas are moving around. So that kind of a notion is felt. And if at all you have to observe a vaster area, it should be always by considering a moving vehicle as a constant, and in relation to that moving vehicle, you will be observing the surrounding area. And hence, all the theories of astronomy which are mentioned in the Indian Jyotisha Shastra, Indian Jyotisha as such, and particularly again there you have the two component Ganita and Zapala in the Ganita Bhaga, that whatever is mentioned is based upon that kind of a notion where though you are in a moving object of the earth, you will be studying this in relation to the surroundings so that you can have a vaster description. Now, it's a very common sense. If you are in a moving vehicle and then observe the surroundings, you can observe a larger area. If you are steady on the ground and you are observing the moving vehicle, you will have a very short duration to observe the moving vehicle. You cannot observe it for a longer duration. So, if you have to observe for a longer duration, it has to be on the moving vehicle, and you can examine or observe the vaster area, and hence based upon that, the whole of the astronomy, Indian astronomy is built up. So, if at all there is a credit to go to the observe this establishment of a heliocentric universe, it should go to Indian philosophy. Starts from Rigveda. Varahamihira has given a very beautiful and very constructive, structured description of the same. But if you look at the history as studied now, and even if you have, when you have studied in elementary school, Nicholas Copernicus is given the credit of establishing this theory of heliocentric universe. And of course, there is a story that he was punished for that, and because the church believed in geocentric universe. So that controversy issue. I think we should be vocal about the contributions of Indian philosophy. though we may not change the history as recorded by the Western interests. That's the one part. Now, तत्र खलु अयने द्वे युगपत् संवत्सरो भवति ते तु पञ्चयुगमिति संज्ञां लभन्ते त एष निमेषादियुगपर्यन्तः कालः चक्रवत् परिवर्तमानः कालचक्रम् इत्युच्यते इत्येके. Another very important character of the kala is it has a cyclical fashion. It just rotates. Now, see, you have the cyclical fashion is in every sector. You start with the day and night, it repeats every time. Year, it repeats every time. Of course, seasons, rainy season, every year it comes in and then we have that. So, similarly, infinitely, there is a chakra or a cyclical movement. And that cyclical movement of cyclical version of the time is the basics of or simply is established and it's a practice in India from a longer duration. A proof of that, a visible structured proof of that is the sculpture at Sun Temple in Konark, where the Kala Chakra is depicted in the form of a beautiful sculpture, and it's the interest of lots of people, hundreds of thousands of people who visit over that. Or the Kalachakra Mandala is also a method of worship in the Tibetan Buddhas. And in McLeodganj Dharmashala temple, you have that Kalachakra, which also represents the same cyclical activity. Interestingly, the very famous theory of Stephen Hawking, a famous scientist who says about the theory of time travel, is I say that it's a poor copy of what the Kalachakra said, this theory says. Of course, there was a lot of controversy in 2018 when the then Science and Technology Minister Harshavardhan commented on this. Lots of so-called rational scientists had objected, and there was a big issue. Now, whether Stephen Hawking has commented about Veda or not, whether that comment is true or not, I would easily say that the whatever the theory of the relative time, the theory of the relativity of time mentioned by Stephen Hawking is a poor copy of what the Indian philosophy would say. इह तो वर्ष शरद हेमंत वसंत ग्रीष्म प्रावृष षडृतवो भवन्ति दोषोपचय प्रकोप उपशमनिमित्तं ते तु भाद्रपदाद्येन द्विमासिकेन व्याख्याताः तद्यथा भाद्रपद आश्वयुजो वर्षाः कार्तिक मार्गशीर्षौ शरत् पौष माघौ हेमन्तः फाल्गुन चैत्रौ वसन्तः वैशाख ज्येष्ठौ ग्रीष्मः आषाढ़ श्रावणौ प्रवृद्धि. Now this Chaitra Vaishakha masas are based upon the lunar assessment, whereas Mesha Vrushabha are the months assessed in the term of the solar system. Now, Sushruta gives you both these equations, that the solar system months as well as the lunar system months. So, based upon that, Chaitra Vaishakha is of course, Bhadrapada Ashwaja Varshaha. Varsha Rutu would be Bhadrapada Ashwaja Masa and Kartika Marga Sharad Rutu and so on. Now, there is another of controversy. The issue is in Shruta Samhita, when the Rutus are mentioned, it's about Varsha, Sharad, Hemanta, Vasanta, Grishma, Prav in one context. In another context, that Prav Rutu is not really mentioned in some other context as such. If you look at the other texts as such, in of course, Charaka also refers to the Pravrat Rutu, but in Ashtanga you do not have the Pravrat Rutu. Of course, even as per the custom, if you look at the custom in India, in northern India, Pravrat Rutu is not really considered. Whereas in the southern part of India, Pravrat Rutu is considered. But based upon the Vedic culture now, because you have universal Vedic culture, most of the times practically that Pravrat Rutu is not considered. Now this is the basic issue of controversy, like whether the Rutu assessment is proper or not. To get into that, the basics of the Rutu system, you have to have some idea about the environmental factors. Now Rutu systems in India, which is practiced now, again, at the current situation, the Rutu systems are presented by our national calendar under two heads, the Drika Rutu system and the lunar Rutu system. Drika Rutu system, where the dates are almost constant. The second column is about the Drika Rutu system, and these are the dates of 2022, the dates when the Rutu system changes, Rutu changes, like Vasanta Rutu, April 13th, as per Dhrika Ritu, whereas lunar Ritu is about by February 19th. Now, and the lunar months, this Ritu system, the dates change every year because the lunar assessment will be based upon the movement of the moon, where every month would have 30 days, and hence the year ends in 360 days. So you'll have 6 days extra. Whereas, and hence that has to be corrected by having a Adhika Masa once in 4 or 5 years, so that one extra month is added. So the correction of the month in lunar system results in variation in the dates as such. Whereas with the lunar solar system or a Dhrikruti system, the dates are almost constant. That could be changed by 1 or 2 days here and there based upon the solar movement correction, and the correction is always 1 day in 4 years. The Adhika Masa, that February 29th, which is added in once in 4 years. That's how the time correction is done to have these solar and the lunar correction systems. Now, based upon that, the dates of these would be changing as per the national calendar. But the problem would be the environmental conditions would be different in different zones of India. In northern India, the winter is for longer duration, whereas in southern India and in some areas, the winter is lesser, and particularly in Udupi, in the coastal area, virtually you have no winter. It's only the sun and sunny season, and summer and the rainy season. These are the only two seasons which we have. And the Rutu effects on the body would be based upon that particular geographical variation, and hence this system has to be assessed, changed as such. That idea of changing that system comes in that assessment or inclusion of the proud Rutu. Proud Rutu is included in those areas where the rainy season is longer, and the Shishira Rutu and Hemanta Rutu, the two cold seasons are added in those areas where the cold season is more like in the northern India or some parts of the northern India. So this is not a controversy. This suggests about the flexibility of the Ruti assessment and its impact on the body. Now, this flexibility or this is a very essential factor which we have to consider when we go into the practical aspects of using the ritucharya as such. Now, to make out this correction, the Indian Science or Meteorological Department has done many efforts. One of that would be to have a 4 season description like winter, spring, summer instead of that 6 seasons. But even this also really doesn't really solve the issue. Then comes the other description of because the Indian geography is quite varying, dividing that Indian environmental zones based upon the monsoon rainfall, as well as they are also stamps classification of the climatic region. There are 8 zones divided, and based upon these 8 zones, the environmental factors would be changing as such. If at all you are interested in, you can study this more by following that meteorological department website. I will not waste my time. The point is, the assessment of these seasons would be based upon the environmental conditions over there, and this fact has a relevance when it comes to the question of following these the ritucharya and suggesting about the medical intervention. Otherwise, if we follow blindly based upon the calendar system, that month solar or the other way, the real purpose of the ritucharya may not be achieved. So there is a need to review the whole idea of that ritucharya and prescribing that ritucharya to the patients or to the human healthy persons based upon the environmental conditions instead of simply looking at the calendar. That's all the point. Now, why that ritucharya? That's if you look at this, tatra varshasu voshadeha tarunyaha alpaviryaha apascha aprashantaha क्षितिमलप्रायाः ताः उपयुज्यमानाः नभसि मेघावर्ते जलप्रकिन्यायां भूमौ क्लीनदेहानां प्राणिनां शीत वात आविष्ट अम्भिसाग्नीनां विलक्ष्यन्ते विलाहात् पित्तं सञ्चयम् आपादयन्ति ससञ्चयः शरदि प्रविरलमेघे विलयति उपशुष्यति पङ्के अर्ककिरणविप्रलापितः पैतिकान् व्याधीन् जनयति. In the Varsha Ritu, due to the rain, the water would be contaminated, and the ocean, the plants would have very tender leaves, and hence their virya, their potency would be lesser, and the water would be having the content of the dirt as such, and hence there is a possibility of having more diseases related to that exposure to the cold. Shita Vata Vistambita Agnina. The Agni would be affected, and hence the digestion would be affected, results in the Pitta Sanjaya Mapadayati. There will be accumulation of the Pitta, and that accumulation of the Pitta in the next Sharad Rutu, when the rain reduces, it becomes liquefied, and hence it produces a visible Pittaja Vyadhi. In the Sharad Rutu, Pittaja Vyadhi is produced. So you will have more of the Pitta Vyadhis. Now, a assessment, objective assessment of this should be done based upon the environmental conditions. What we see in our area, more of the Pittaja Vyadhis would occur in the month of July, August, which is not really the Sharad Rutu. Because at the end of the rainy season, or maybe August and September, that's the usual time where you will have more of the Pittaja Vyadhis in our area. So that kind of an assessment, a objective assessment now is required based upon the geographical conditions and the environmental conditions of that particular area. We cannot just apply the same formula to as per the calendar. त एव औषधे कालपरिणामात् परिणतिवीर्याः बलवत्य हेमन्ते भवति आपश्च प्रशान्ताः स्निग्धाः अत्यत्वं गुर्व्यश्च ताः उपयुज्यमानाः मन्दकिरणत्वात् भानोः सतुषार पवन उपस्तम्भितदेहानां देहिनाम् अभिदग्धाः स्नेहात् शैत्य उद्गारौ उपलेपाच्च श्लेष्मसञ्चयम् आपादयन्ति ससञ्चयः वसन्ते अर्करश्मि प्रविलायित ईषत् स्तब्धदेहानां देहिनां श्लेष्मिकान् व्याधीन् जनयति. During the Vasanta Ritu, Kaphaja Vyadhi would occur because in the previous Ritu, there will be accumulation of the kapha due to the cold exposure. So that's the effect which is occurring in the body. And hence, in the Vasanta Ritu, there will be more of Kaphaja Vyadhi, and this also has to be tackled. Now, in what we see in our area, is that more of the Kaphaja Lakshanas are produced during the September-October in month as such. So that's what we see as such. त एव औषधे निदाघ्ये निसाराः रुक्षाः अतिमात्रं लघ्वया भवन्त्यापश्च ताः उपयुज्यमानाः सूर्यप्रतापशोषितदेहानां देहिनां रौक्ष्यात् लघुत्वाच वायोः सञ्चयम् आपादयन्ति. ससञ्चयः प्रावृषि चात्यर्थं जलोपक्लिनायां भूमौ क्लिनदेहानां देहिनां शीतवातवर्षेरिताः वातिकान् व्याधीन् जनयन्ति. The Vatika Vyadhis are produced in the Pravrat Rutu, just before the rainy season. So that's about the real fact. And these facts are true if at all you assess the temperature conditions of the environment, and it cannot be just followed by the calendar system, which is one of the area where we need an extensive research, extensive review, and these Swastha should be followed based upon that particular zone. The time duration of the Swastha followed in Udupi may not be applicable for following in some other areas where the environmental conditions are different. So there is a need to reassess this issue as such. And an objective study probably is not done anywhere. That's one of the need of the day. तत्र वर्षा हेमंत ग्रीष्मेषु संचितानां दोषाणां शरद वसंत प्रावृत्ति प्रपितानां निर्हरणं कर्तव्यम्. So in the Sharad Vasanta Pravrat Rutu, you will have to have the Shodhana for the individual doshas, Pittam in the Sharad and Vasanta Kapha. In the Pravrat Rutu, the Vata has to be treated. So Paitikanam Yadhinam Upashamaha Hemante, Shleshmikanam Nidhage, Vatikanam Sharadi, Subhavateva, Tayete Sanjay Prakopa Prashamaha Vyakhyataha. So that's all the point. Though the seasons, they are absolutely true. Effect of the environmental factors over the body are absolutely true. And there is a need to review this according to the geographical conditions. Now, moreover, तत्र पूर्वाह्ने वसन्तस्य लिङ्गं मध्याह्ने ग्रीष्मस्य अपराह्ने प्रावृषः प्रदोषे वार्षिकं शारदम् अर्धरात्रे प्रत्युषसि हेमन्तम् उपलक्षयेत. एवम् अहोरात्रमपि वर्षमिव शीतोष्ण वर्षलक्षणं दोषोपजय प्रकोप उपशमे हि जानीयात्. The similar cyclical effect of the seasons can be seen in the daytime too, in the 24 hours day, and that's in the Purvanya Vasanta Silingam. In the early morning it's Vasanta Lakshana, Madhyane in the Grishma Lakshana, Aparane Pravat Lakshana, Pradosha. In the very late midnight it will be the Varsha Lakshana, and Sharada Madhya Ardharatra. In the exact midnight is Sharad Rudra Lakshana. early morning it's a Hemant Rakshana which is seen, and correspondingly there can be a cyclical change, diurnal changes of the doshas in the body, though they may not require a specific treatment, but when it comes to the question of clinical presentation of the diseases, it will have some relevance. Now, more of these issues we can discuss when we go into the next Nidana Sthana somewhere where these are can be discussed in more detail as such. So we'll keep more of the discussion for the next consequent issues. Now, another important issue is that the Rutus can be of a proper nature, optimum, or there could be a change. तत्र अव्यापन्नेषु ऋतुषु अव्यापन्नाः ओषधे भवन्ति आपश्च ताः उपयुज्यमानाः प्राण आयु बल वीर्य ओजस्कार्यो भवन्ति. Avyapana Ritu are the normal seasons. That's the changes which occur in the environment are as it is expected. But there could be a Vyapana Ritu, there could be seasonal changes which can occur. The climate change, now one of the very hot word now, climate change. Everyone is speaking about the climate change, global thermal changes like temperature being raised and so on. And during the rainy season, you may not have the rain, and so that's the one of the major issues of the present day. Now, in such conditions, Traisham Punah Vyapadaha Adhishtakaritaha, due to that climate change, the complications or the diseases would occur which cannot be predicted. And Shitoshna Mata Varshani Khalu, Viparitani, Voshadi Vyapadayanti Apascha, the environmental factors like the water as well as the plants, their quality would be affected, and hence you may not expect the same clinical results and the clinical consequences in the patients or in the healthy persons as well as in any of the living beings. And in the present day situation, it's a real burning issue. The causes for the climate changes could be many. It's a human created like the pollution, or it could be the other way, the global changes. Now we will not go into that part, but virtually situations where you have a real avyapana rutu or a real proper rutu has become almost absent now. So every season you feel that there is some aberration from the normal conditions. तासाम् उपयोगात् विविधरोगप्रादुर्भावः मरको वा भवति इति अत्र अव्यापन्नानाम् औषधीनाम् अपां च उपयोगः. In the Vyapana Ritu and the medicinal plants which are available during that season, they cannot give the same results as such, and hence you will have to have Avyapana Oshadhi. This is what Sushruta has said. But practically to get that would be difficult. As far as the climate change is concerned, as I said, it's one of the burning topic now, and impact of the climate change over the behavior of the animals and the living beings are studied. But in the present situation, though, there are a lot of literature coming over the effect of climate change, and it's a burning topic, the exact effect on the human physiology and use of that in the medicine still is not there in the contemporary system. And hence, this view of Ayurveda, that where the impact of the climate change over the physiology of the body and the disease and its management is a major treasure house for the future, and we have to present it in a proper manner. Effect of the climate change over the plant and plant contents are studied now, and you have lots of information coming over there in relation to the agricultural ecosystems, but may not be from the point of view of the medicinal effects of the plant and plant contents. So there is a need to review that component also as such. So there is a huge area of a new outlook for Ayurvedic approach, and it can be, if at all it is done properly, it can be a excellent treasure for the future generation of the human beings. Now, kadachit avyapanneshvapi rutushu कृत्य अभिशाप रक्ष क्रोधाधर्मै अधर्मैः उपध्वस्यन्ते जनपदाः विषौषधि पुष्पगन्धेन वा वायुना उपनीतेन आक्रम्यते यो देशः तत्र दोषप्रकृति विशेषेण कासश्वास वमथु प्रतिश्याय शिरोरुज्वरैः उपतप्यन्ते ग्रह नक्षत्र चरितेर्वा गृहदार शयन आसन यान वाहन मणिरत्न उपकरण गर्भित लक्षण निमित्त प्रादुर्भावेर्वा. Now, even if the otherwise the seasons are apparently normal, there could be some other acquired factors, the human created factors, like the either intentionally hurting that polluting the environment intentionally, like war or so on, or abhishapa, now due to the curse by some people, now curse whether really it affects or not, we'll keep that in the other way. Then Raksha Krodha Adharmihi, due to improper lifestyle and these organisms coming to pandemics, COVID and so on, Raksha. So these can be resulting in the affecting the whole universe, and it can result in the diseases of different category like Kasa, Shwasa, Omatu, Pratishaya, etc. Now, in such a condition, where the environment has become so distorted and that produces the disease, one of the option is, according to Sushruta, tatra sthana parityagaha. You leave that zone and go to some other zone. Migration is one of the options suggested. Even now, that migration is one of the options whenever there are such issues related to the environment. In a war field, people migrate from the war area to the other area and so on. Or the other options are Shanti Karma, Prayashchitta, Mangala, Japa, Homa, Upahara, Ijja, Anjali, Namaskara, Tapaha, Niyamaha. Auspicious activities, whether they have really a role or not, controversy, but those who believe in it definitely have to accept that. Then Daya, Dana, Diksha, Abhipagama, Devata, Brahmana, Guru Parehi Bhavitavyam. You will have to follow the standard protocols of the life, help others, help each others, and follow the standard protocols of the life. Then only you can survive these kinds of the natural calamities. So natural calamities, the solutions are mainly threefold. One is sthana parityagaha, migration. The other is following the religious norms as such. The third is mutual helping each others and having a normal, a mutual helping lifestyle. This can help you to cross over those natural calamities. Now the same, the whatever is mentioned, again Sushruta repeats with a form of shloka. अथ ऊर्ध्वम् अव्यापन्नानां ऋतूनां लक्षणानि उपदेक्ष्यामः वायुर्वात्युत्तरः शीतः रजो धूमाकुलाः दिशाः छन्नस्तुषारैः सपिता हिमानद्धाः जलाशयाः दर्पिताः ध्वांश खड्ग अह्व महिष उरभ्रकुञ्जराः रौद्रप्रियङ्गुपुन्नागाः पुष्पिताः हिमसाह्वये. In the Hemant Rutu, the season would present with the wind moving towards the north. Now, this again is depending upon the signs which are seen in the base of Himalaya. It may not be true in our zone. So this description of the seasons has to be modified depending upon the environmental zones where you live in. In cold winter in Udupi, you may not have the wind moving towards the north. Instead, it will be moving towards the south as such. So that's all the geographical issues which need to be presented in different manner. But the description of the Shita Rutu, Hemanta Rutu in the northern zones are similarly Shishire Shitamadikam, Vata Vrastyakulah Dishaha, Shesham Hemantvat Sarvam Vijnayam Lakshanam Budehi, Siddha Vidyadhara Vadhu Charana Alaktaka Kankshite, Malaye Chandana Lata Parishwanga Adivasite, Vati Kami Janananda Janano Anangadipanaha, Dampatyoho Manabhiduraha, Vasanto Dakshino Nilaha, Dishaha Vasante Vimalaha, Kanani Upashobitaha, Kimshuka Ambhoja Makula, Chuta Ashokadi Pushpitihi, Kokila Shatpadagani, Upagitaha Manoharaha, Dakshinanila Sambitaha, Sumukaha, Palovajwalaha. The sprouting season, it's Vasanta Rutu is the sprouting season where the plants would be sprouting, as well as in animals too. It's the season for the fertilization. Grishme Tikshamshoha Adityaha Maruto Nairuto Asukaha Bhuh Taptaha Saritaha Tanmeha Dishaha Pradjolita Iva Brant Chakraha Yugalaha Paya Panakulaha Mragaha Dhasta Virut Trinalataha Viparna Ankita Kalapaha. The summer season, the plants will dry, animals will be are searching for water, the sources of water will be diminished. These are the signs as such. Pravshyambaramanadham Paschimanilakarshitehim Ambudehi Vidyut Jyota Prasrutehi Tumulaswanehi Komala Shama Shashpadjaha Shakra Gopajvalamihi Kadamba Nipakutaja Sarja Ketaka Bhushtaha. In the pre-rainy season, there will be clouds, and then there can be this lightning and so on. And the bigger plants like kadamba, nipa, etc., they grow well. Varshas nadyahambhaschanna ukhata tatadrumaha vapyaha propulla kumuda nila utpala virajitaha भूः अव्यक्तस्थलश्वभ्राः बहुशः सस्य उपशोभिताः नातिगर्जत् श्रवन् मेघ निरुद्ध अर्कग्रहं नभः. In the rainy season, the all water sources will be full, or they may even overflow, and the all the water sources, including the rivers and wells and so on. And the plants like Kumuda Nila Utpala, they tend to grow as such, and the land will be cleaner as the water flows out. The dirt from the land will be washed out, and hence it looks cleaner, and you will have plenty of plants growing over there. Bablu Hushna Sharadhyarka Shweta Abhavimala Nabha Tata Saramsi Amguruhi Bhandi Hamsa Hamsakati Dehi Panga Shushka Duma Kirnaha Nimnonata Sameshu Bana Saptaha Bandhu Kasha Asana Virajitaha. In the Sharad Rutu, you will have a clear sky, and the water also will be somewhat cleaner. So that's about the description of the Rutu. As I said earlier, this has to be redescribed or redefined based upon the geographical variations as such and what we see around. स्वगुणैः अतियुक्तेषु विपरीतेषु आपणः विषमेष्वपि कुप्यन्ति ऋतुषुद्धेहिनाम्. See, if there is in the seasons, depending upon the qualities, guna of that rutu, whatever the guna which is seen in that rutu, correspondingly the doshas would be aggravated, and hence there is a need to assess the doshas as such. The general rule is Hared Vasante Shleshmanam Pittam Sharadi Nirharet Varshasu Shamayat Vayum Prag Vikarasamuchayat. That's the summary of what's mentioned earlier in the Vasanta Rutu. Kapha Harachikisa Vamana has to be done, and Pittam Sharad Nirharet, in Virechana has to be given in Pitta Sharad Rutu, and Basti has to be given in the Varsha Rutu. So that's about the ritucharya Adhyaya. To summarize, the perception of time and seasons in Indian philosophy is a beacon of the contemporary physics, and environmental factors have a decisive impact on health of living beings. Methodical approach to the seasonal variations is a unique concept of Ayurveda which needs to be preserved and developed. Seasonal variations in different geographic zones and the climate change effects need to be reviewed, and there is a good scope for a new sort of research, or when we say modernization of Ayurveda, it should be from this point of view, like you need to have the modernized view as such. With this, we will conclude today, and if there are any questions. I think there are no questions, so fine. So we will conclude today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.